They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Jen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to Everybody's Dead Dave, our Red Dwarf review podcast featuring myself, Adam Martyn, and as always, my co-host,
Philip Hawkins. Hello.
Hello, that do be him and that do be me. We're back with another episode. We're continuing our trek back to Earth, as it were, with part 2 of the 3-part mini-series special, whatever you want to call it, that originally went out in 2009, which feels like a very long time ago.
That was 13 years ago.
13 years ago at the time of recording. Crazy, isn't it? And
I remember I watched every episode in bed as I went to sort of bed that night.
Yeah.
It was actually, I think it aired all in one week. I think it aired 3 days in a row rather than weekly.
I've heard Dave as a channel, every time there's a new series, tends to do that. They do like a run of every episode ever before the new series, I think. At least I've read that somewhere. I'm sure some fans will be able to pick it up in the comments. But yes, we part 1, I think it's fair. I mean, if you haven't heard our takes on part 1, maybe go and listen to that first so you're all up to speed. But if you're joining us again from that, I think it's fair to say, Phil, our thoughts on part 1 weren't particularly too good.
No, I mean, I think we managed to pick out a couple of things we maybe slightly liked about some elements.
Yeah,
but I think it was very much searching for a needle in a haystack there. We were...
Exactly.
We had to really.
We were trying to find the good. We were.
We do like to find some good in stuff.
Yeah, because it's often there. But yeah, there was I'm trying to think, like dodgy CGI, lack of a studio audience, which didn't really help a lot of the jokes. There was lots of things going on there. But hey, part 2, when we left off, we had a dimension hole port or whatever you want to call it open. Maybe this was all going to be quite different. So we may as well start back at the beginning. So with part 1, we're still on Red Dwarf. The dimension hole has been opened. But I want to say, the credits for this series, the opening tune, obviously it continues the trend of, showing bits of what's to come in the series and all that. But I quite like that now we get the lead cast in it as well, like with their names.
Oh, you know what? I hadn't... Did we never get that before then?
No, it was in series... I think series 3 was the first time it, did the clips, because series 1 and 2 was the slow panning shot. But from series 3 to 8, it was just clips. There were no names, no focus or anything. I don't know. I thought it slotted in quite well. It didn't feel unnatural. I quite liked it.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's something we like, right?
Yeah, I think
right
they get... Also, another thing I liked about the opening is that the Red Dwarf logo feels a bit 3D-esque.
Yes. Got a bit of a...
In a kind of very
look.
Sort of Windows XP type way.
It was 2009, folks. It was it's certainly a different time. And so as this portal's being opened, the science officer, the dimension opens. It says invalid. Was it invalid reality or something like that?
Yeah. What did you think when they said that initially?
Well, I thought it was sort of a setup for a weird gag or something. Like maybe we'd get a quick glimpse and then she'd find the right reality, if you get me. Like sort of a window shopping thing. But no, it gets invalid and then things start to go awry. Although what I will say is, the physical comp, there's this bit with Crichton and Rimmer, where he's like, have we got any dirt on her? And all that sort of stuff. The physical acting's good as always, but I don't know, it felt slightly awkward as well. I don't know if that's lack of a studio audience or... With
the lack of the laughter and the kind of... But they're still leaving spaces for the laughter, it feels like. We said this last time. Everything kind of feels like really awkward. Like somebody's made a joke... When somebody makes a joke in a room and nobody laughs, it's...
Yeah.
It's like...
It's one of those.
Awkward.
Yeah. And what I do like, though, is as things start to go wrong with the machine, a lot of... this loud, funky incidental music plays. And I know I mentioned it in part 1 that some of the incidental music I actually quite liked. I felt it punctuated those moments quite well. And I'd say for this bit, because it's more like with things going wrong, it did sort of fit that really well, but I did find it a bit overpowering after a while, especially since we're not used to it in Red Dwarf, really,
Possibly.
on the whole.
I was actually thinking at one point, it was a bit later on, but I did wonder if maybe a bit more incidental music, where there wasn't any, might have helped cover the lack of laughter a bit more.
I think so, yeah. Just something in the background.
Yeah, because a lot of the time it was completely dead, like there was nothing.
Yeah.
There was just a gap, and I think some more incidental music, maybe it would have been overpowering, I don't know, but I had the thought, oh, maybe they should have really ramped up, and if they're going to go this route of having it, single camera and do it more like film, have the sort of film soundtrack to go with it. And they do in parts, like you say, but it felt like it should have been more.
It's a bit inconsistent, I guess, it really. Like, either have it go all the way with it or just leave it out, maybe.
Yeah, but, while we're in the hangar, I'm going to make the comment about the CGI again.
Oh, go for it.
Specifically the green screen onto the CGI background, because again, it looked really bad.
Yeah.
The environment itself and the hangar would look fine, but the characters being put into it does not look good.
No, and it's a shame, because I think we said from last time, out of all like the CG sets that we saw, I think we both agreed that we thought the hangar looked the best in terms of like getting the vastness of Red Dwarf across.
Yeah,
like this was a big ship.
The actual hangar itself and the design of the hangar and the implementation of the hangar is fine. It's when they put the characters in it and they green screen them into it, it's really obvious.
Yeah, not the best, even for 2009 standards. Sorry, Dave TV channel. Not up to snuff, I'm afraid. But as things start to go wrong and they're being pulled into this dimension hole, we cut to a telly shop, a very 2009 Earth telly shop, where people are shopping for tellies, but they're also seeing what's happening on the screen. And
they're watching what's happening on Red Dwarf on the screens.
That's it, yeah. And at first I was like, wait, what? And I will admit, it doesn't give you too long to think about it at first, because it quickly cuts back to in the hangar. Like, it's a quick glimpse at first. And then we see Rimmer's light bee get sucked through, and then the other lads get sucked through as well. And now they are in this TV shop. Although I will say,
they literally come out of the TV.
They fly out the TV. They don't smash the TV. They just like fly out of it. Although I will say, I think it's when Lister gets flung out, again, it's very CG'd, and it doesn't. It looks CG. You know, where he like skids. It looks very CG, and it doesn't look. I get, health and safety. If you put Craig Charles, throw him across a TV shop, potential health and safety risk. But yeah, it didn't
Lister crashed into a table that seemed to be randomly in the walkway. Like they clearly just wanted him to crash into something, so they were like, we'll just put this random table here that has no reason to be there. So he crashed into that wooden table. Then Crichton kind of comes flying, shooting, and goes past several aisles of televisions.
Yes.
And eventually crashes.
And he was what I was thinking of, sorry. That's CG.
Is that
the he comes zooming by, it's a bit ropey.
And then Cat just jumps out elegantly and does a little twirl, which I quite liked. I must admit, that is very Cat.
And very series like one. I think we mentioned it last week, because he did something similar. Though, those little like whoa he used to do, and then from like series 3 onwards, he didn't really do it again. So I like that we're getting those little Catisms back.
We're getting a lot of references, especially in this episode. I picked up on so many references back to previous episodes. In one part, which we'll get to, like they rattle off about 5 of them in the space of about
they do.
20 seconds. So
we'll get to that before we get into like what's happening though. I will say there's a little point where the people shopping for tellies ask if it's HD ready, and he goes like, yeah, sort of HD. That made me chuckle, because just in the 2009, that was I think the peak when do you remember like the digital switchover, the big, we're moving away from analog, and you've got to be HD ready, you've got to get there was a lot of telly upgrades. It just, obviously it was filmed in that time, so it made me chuckle, because I remember the big push, and as a kid, as a teenager, I don't think I really got it at the time, like the technical aspect. I was like, why do we need to change our TVs and all that? So that made me laugh. But as you say, the people on the tellies are watching the Red Dwarf we're watching, which includes when they come through to this world, they're still being watched on those TVs.
Yeah.
And I just wrote, this is insanely meta, and right off the bat, I was like, I'm getting mixed feelings about this.
Yeah, I usually love meta stuff. I've just watched. I don't know if you've seen it, but the new Alvin.
Chip and Dale.
Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers.
Yes, I've seen it.
I was going to say Alvin and the Chipmunks. That's
although they are
that's
referenced.
Different.
They are referenced.
That's different chipmunks. Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers.
Yes,
and
I've
that
seen
is
it.
so meta, and I love every moment of it.
I love most of it, but
yeah.
that's a conversation for another day. But
this,
yeah, you're right.
It is also very meta, but it does not do it as well.
Can I ask you, like, if you can remember when you first saw this back in 2009? Because obviously they say with things like this, these reveals, they're going to be the most impactful when you see it for the first time. Can you remember in these opening bits when you realised, oh, they're in our world, like where they're characters? Like, what can you remember your like initial thoughts as it was happening?
I can't remember. It's so long ago, but I can't remember. But I haven't watched this since then. I think that's probably an indication of what I thought about it at the time. I think I was excited that it was back. I think I was a little bit disappointed with how cheap it looked.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I thought of the story and the kind of script at the time, but and how it,
as you say, it was a fair time ago. 13 years is a long time, but sadly, the realization I thought was kind of ruined a bit, because you know when they're talking about the TV salesman slagging off like Red Dwarf as a show and science fiction.
Yes, that was very meta and kind of like lampshading some of the tropes of the show, because
like with the size scan and
he's going, the salesman to his customers is going, oh yeah, they have well, first of all, he says that he's never really watched it, but then he also knows about the size scan. There we go. But he's like, oh yeah, the size scan, they'll just use that to get any old exposition. Cut to them in the rear behind kind of at the back of the shop doing just that, using the sky scan to get out the exposition. That was slightly clever, I guess.
But then they ruin it by making a penis joke.
Yeah.
Oh, two penis jokes, I should say. First, that this guy has a small penis, like, haha, very funny. And then, something about penis enlargement cream or something like that. And again, like it's those moments where there's no laugh track, no music, nothing. It just felt awkward. Yeah. It's like, why are you... I don't want to hear about the... Like... It gave me very vivid flashbacks to like the Crikey TV style of humor and I'm like, no, like we don't need. It's been 10 years. We don't need to do this again. We get a little commentary on 2009 viewing habits. You know, where Rimmer says, "Oh, Saturday night television, they stick freaks on the TV to sing and dance for the obvious things like X Factor and all that sort of stuff." Which you could argue dates this a little bit, but I mean. Yeah, X Factor's not a thing now, but there are still shows where people are made... Britain's Got Talent, I guess, and things like that, so... Yeah,
it does date it, but apparently, originally the script had specifically mentioned 2009. And I think, according to the IMDb trivia section anyway, Craig Charles was the one that specifically said, oh, we shouldn't put the actual year in, we should just keep it vague and say early 21st century so that it doesn't date it too much.
That's a good sci-fi fan right there. So.
Yeah.
Because it's true, though, isn't it? In a lot of sci-fi, comedy or drama, as soon as you start putting years to things, it will, isn't it? That's the facet of it. But sure enough, we
do get Crichton's high-pitched voice again. I know
yes,
you're a fan of the high-pitched voice.
It made me smile, but it didn't make me laugh. I think that's do you know what I mean? It just made me smile. Like, oh yeah, it's the high pitched voice, but maybe it's because it didn't have a laugh track. I don't know.
While they're still in the video shop as well, they read the back of the DVD cover.
Did you
actually the back of the DVD cover? It's
I read it with them.
Text.
I grabbed it and I was like, oh my God, it's so weird. But you know what? I hadn't read that before watching Back to Earth. If I'd have read that, where it's just like they search for the actors, I would have been like, what on earth is this?
Yeah. And there was a joke that I thought was going to be one of my favorite jokes, but how it ended kind of was really weird. So Rimmer goes, oh, not a three-parter. I hate three-parters, which I thought was possibly a fun meta reference back to maybe Back in the Red part 1, 2, and 3. And then the scene just stops. Like it just cuts to them in a different place.
Don't they? Yeah.
Different place. And like there's no punchline. He says something else and then there's not a punchline to it. and then it kind of just fades as a
Yeah.
quick fade and it's them in a different part of the shopping center. It's like, what? Why did that scene just end? That doesn't feel like the scene has ended. It's really weird.
It's very bizarre. I know, like on Dave, they have commercial breaks, so they have to. I think that's where the fade to black bits come from. But even then, if you know you're gonna have commercial break, have a punchline, have something.
Yeah, because even if I'd been watching that on Dave and it went to a commercial break there, I would have felt that they had gone to a break in the middle of a scene.
Yeah.
And not waited till the end of the scene. It was very bizarre.
Yeah, just odd. I did like the video DVD joke. That made me chuckle a little bit.
That was good.
About losing discs and
because
videos are too
we've
big.
mentioned this on the pod before. Why are they using VHSs? And obviously it's because it started in the 80s and that's what people used then. But they've now got an in-universe explanation for it. They use VHSs in the future because people kept on losing DVDs, so they went back to VHSs.
See, nice little continuity tie up there.
Nice little continuity.
Nicely done.
Of course, it does, gloss over the fact that, again, they wouldn't have known this at the time, but it dates it somewhat that, now digital media, you don't need either.
No, it's got one of those, isn't it? But they suss out that they're in our world, yes, viewer, yours and our world, where Back to Earth is literally happening right now in that moment. They don't know how many episodes they've got left. And although we get this Series 10 reference that you mentioned last week, because as you say, on the back of your Blu-rays and DVDs, it does say this takes place after the events of Series 10. So, and there's a moment later, I was going to ask you this. So, Back to Earth is a 3-part... Is it considered Series 9? Because, of course, then...
listed everywhere. Like, if you look on IMDb, if you watch it on... Well, just anywhere it tends to be listed, it does tend to be listed as Series 9, yes. So
yeah, because the next series after this is labelled Series 10.
Yeah.
But there's a moment later on where they mention Series... I'll get to that when we get there, but that confused me a little bit. So I'm very curious to see what Series 10 is going to be about now when we get there.
Well, yeah, I think they kind of... Yeah, I don't think they necessarily knew that they were going to be making any more when they made this. So when they eventually made Series 10, it doesn't necessarily line up with what they say here.
Ah, I see. Interesting. the plot thickens further. Yeah. But then they decide they need to get some money because, in our world, as you know, in our world, money makes the world go round here. So they need some money. Crichton tries to sell his head. That doesn't quite work. So in an attempt to get money, they just start selling, I'm guessing, random odds and sods they have? They just have all this stuff on the table?
No, this is the joke. They are finding all this stuff down the back of the sofa.
Oh,
the joke being that
you
always find loads of random stuff and money down the back of a sofa. So they've gone to this sofa, which is actually, they're in a sofa store. There's loads of sofas. But they're still finding loads of stuff down the back of the sofa, even though it's a sofa store.
See, that's a good joke. Is there a shot of them, though, like looking, like with their hand down a sofa, grabbing
I think
stuff?
So.
Oh, I must have just missed that then. The way I watched it, it just seemed like they just had this stuff and they were selling it. Although, I mean, some of the stuff they were selling was condoms, which I could totally believe Lister would just have in his pocket because, So
yeah, no, that was condoms they had found down the back.
Right.
Of the
well.
sofa.
That is a good joke.
Store.
I'll give you that. That's a clever joke. They decide, after getting a bit of money, that they need to go to this sci-fi shop called They Walk Among Us.
Which is a real sci-fi shop.
I was going to ask, the frontage, it looked too, fleshed out to be fake. Do you know what I mean? It looked too... Is it still there now,
I don't know if it's still there now, but it was indeed a real... a real one. It was, I think it's in, let me see. Hold on. I saw it written somewhere.
I must admit, when they were mentioning it, I was like, are we going to get a Forbidden Planet reference? Is it? Because obviously, you'd argue that the biggest one in London.
No, it's called They Walk Among Us. It is a real comic book shop and it's in Richmond, London. Whether or not it's still, should we Google it now?
Yeah, why not? We'll see if it's, so if anyone wants to visit this shop that was seen in Back to Earth, we're going to see if it still is open.
I'm on the street in Street View. But it's apparently on.
Is it still open, dear viewer?
Oh, wait. What's this? Oh, no, it is still there. It's well, there is a comic book shop on that street. It's no longer called They Walk Among Us. It's now called Ray Gun.
Oh, slightly less interesting title, but
It does look like the right frontage from what we saw in the show. But
well, there you go. If you're around Richmond or if you're ever flocking by, maybe check it out for yourself. See if it's still there. So they go to They Walk Among Us, and right away as they go in, there's a lot of Red Dwarf merch. I take it, was this real merchandise?
I think yes, it was. Some of it, I definitely recognise. There's you could buy the Starbug with the little tiny people that you saw on the counter. And I'm sure there's things like the publicity shots were sold at conventions and things. So
absolutely, and you can see all the DVDs in the background in a lot of the shots, which I thought was a nice touch. The gag as they go in and they say, "Oh yeah, listening to music," and the shop owner's like, "No." I can't remember. Does he explain what he's? They don't really go anywhere with that, do they?
No, I think it's meant to be like, yes, this is a slightly
he's just a
weird
bit odd.
guy.
Yeah. Because it just sort of happens, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that was a joke,"
Yeah, there are so
again,
many references in this scene, though. It's not just what decorates the set, because
it doesn't stop.
The merch and stuff. There's a Space Core directive joke from the.
There is. It's been a while since we've had one of those
from the comic book guy, and there is.
And the owner is the fan. He's like, "Oh, I love it when you get it wrong," and all that. That is that is that, isn't it? Yeah.
And then, of course, Rimmer does get it wrong. Because the comic book guy lists a directive number, and
yes,
he's like, "I love it when you get it wrong," and then Rimmer does get it wrong. I can't remember what he says now, but then
something about space monkeys withdrawn banana privileges or something like that.
That's the one.
Something like that.
Yeah. So there's all that, and then there's a list of like they need to get somewhere. And so the guy is listing off. He seems to just accept that they're the real.
Yeah, he's the only
people.
one who's just like, yeah, you. Because I thought he was going to freak out, and be like, oh my god, it's Craig Charles, or yeah. But he's just like, yeah, dimension slide, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so he has a load of suggestions for how they would get to where they need to go. He's like Hollyhock Drive, and these are all deep cut references to old episodes. So Hollyhock Drive. Time paddle, slides. Slides, yeah. And they were like, no, that's back on Red Dwarf and blah, blah, blah.
Although we do get this joke where he's like, oh, well, you could just beam there. And they all go, no, that's Star Trek. No, that's not us. That's not us. So Trek is canonical in this universe and also their universe, clearly.
Yes. And and he also references the Series 9, which of course we have not seen.
This is what I'm talking about. The bathtub from Series 9, and he says it is and he says it referring to Kachansky's death.
Yeah, and he says it's the best series. So we've missed out in the real world on the best series.
Yeah, because I wrote, right, so if Back to Earth is usually classed as Series 9, but we haven't seen this happen yet.
No, so this is a different series. So this is, we call this series. I would refer to Back to Earth now, in hindsight, as Series 9. But obviously they weren't, when they were making it, they were trying to imply there had been a Series 9, which there hadn't been. Which does, actually, we've been referring to it as them coming into our world. It's not our world, because we never got Series 9. So it's a adjacent world, which is very similar to our world, but not quite the same, where we also have Red Dwarf, but their world got one more series than we got.
Isn't it a good job?
2 series, potentially.
Isn't it a good job we're all more acquainted with multiverses now? Otherwise this might be confusing.
The Red Dwarf multiverse. I should make a video on that.
You should. There'd be a lot of potential there. But they contact the head of the Red Dwarf fan club, who is known as who's changed his name to Reg Dwarf. Was it Reg Dwarf?
Well, they don't contact him. The
comic book guy contacts him.
They go to the props guy. So they go to the guy that
Mr. Swallow.
Yeah, who made the prosthetics apparently for the show in this version anyway. And he's somebody else who also just accepts that they are the real people.
Yes, that's true. Before we get to him though, they take the bus to get to him.
They do take the bus. Yes, that's true.
One thing, but Cat keeps leaving these gold things. He leaves one in the sofa shop, like a little gold foil thing that the camera focuses on, and then he leaves one on the bus. It's like the same thing.
I didn't notice this, but I think this is something that was referred to in the trivia section of IMDb, where it says Cat leaving a piece of origami TV in the TV shop is a nod to Blade Runner and is the start of the whole Blade Runner theme.
Oh, because on the back of the box it says like in true Blade Runner fashion or something like that.
They hunt out
right.
their creators.
I've not seen Blade Runner. I'll hold my hands up now. I haven't seen it. So
I have, but it was a while ago and I'm a bit hazy on what happened.
Yeah. But I just know it was those 2 times and I thought, wait, what, like, is this meaning something? But if it's a Blade Runner reference, then that's completely over my head. But as they're on this bus, Lister, through the SFX magazine, no less, which is, I wonder if that was a real issue. You know, the one with the cover of him. I wonder if that was
yeah.
I wonder. But in that magazine, he finds out that in this world, the actor who plays Kochanski is a mum, which I'm guessing explains why she isn't in the series anymore. And he says, "Oh well, she's alive then." And then we get this cute little scene with these 2 kids, who come up, and again, just accept that they say you're Dave Lister. There's just that no question there. What did you think of this scene then with the kids?
It was kind of sweet, but again, it kind of felt like it was like the whole of Back to Earth so far has felt lacking of energy, and this wasn't an exception. But it was. The kids and stuff, they were quite sweet, and you know, they weren't terrible kid actors. Sometimes you can get kid actors and things that are
we've seen a lot worse, I'm sure.
Bad.
Yeah,
but these they were okay. You know, they're not Oscar worthy or anything, but you know, perfectly acceptable.
We learn a bit more about basically what's going on with Kochanski. These kids say they figured it out, as they do. They don't explain how they figured it out, but alas, they have. That Crichton was the only one who saw Kochanski die, quote unquote die, and they reveal to Lister that he was like driving himself towards death, basically, like drinking and all that sort of stuff. And rather than stay and face that, she wanted to get out, so she took Blue Midget and ran. And Crichton, knowing how heartbroken Dave would be, just said that she died.
Yeah,
which
she dumped
makes,
him. Basically, she dumped him and left
him.
on the Blue Midget.
Which I'd say that's not too implausible.
No.
Especially for that version of Kochanski. I feel it's not too implausible. So yeah, but I like this, mate, because again, like with part 1 and the bit where he goes to the gravestone, I like that. I always enjoy seeing Craig Charles not just doing like the comedy side of it, how he actually gets a minute to sort of do a bit more, not more the serious side, but you know, something a bit more dramatic and a bit more with a bit more emotion in it. I agree with you that the energy isn't 100% there, which is a shame. But I like the change of pace every now and then.
Yeah.
I like that we get a moment just to sort of learn a bit more. But it does make me wonder if, I mean, you might remember more than me, I'm not sure. I do wonder if we are going to see Chloe Arnett in part 3, even if it's just as like a cameo. It does make me wonder, because we're getting a lot of exposition about Kochanski now. And I just think it'd be a shame not to have that come to fruition. But hey, we've got one more part, so we'll see. But and I wrote actually in my notes, I put, wait, so maybe we'll find... Because one of the kids says, why don't you make that the thing of the next series, going to find her?
Yeah.
So I wrote in my notes, so is that going to be the plot of Series 10? But as you've said, it's not necessarily what they're implying, so I'm guessing it won't be.
My lips are sealed.
No
spoilers.
No spoilers. As they hop off the bus, they're about to go to No's world, and the science officer from part 1 appears. She just says, "Yeah, I opened another dimension hole," you know, as you do. And she says to Rimmer about the whole, I've come to like erase you, and what did it say? It's like, isn't that first degree murder? And she says, no, it's what's her reasoning for it again? It's okay because
killing holograms is morally and ethically fine because they're already dead.
Yes,
she says to Rimmer, and then Rimmer's like, "Oh, okay then," and then literally just pushes her in front of a car.
It's a very savage Rimmer moment, like, because there's no remorse there whatsoever. He's just like, all right, and it's just like,
it's using her own logic against her.
Do you know? And I will admit, this might sound horrible. It did make me laugh, but I think more for the sheer randomness of it. Like, that was the last thing I was expecting to happen.
Yeah, it's the last thing you were expecting to happen in that moment, but equally, it is absolutely so Rimmer to do it. Oh
God, yeah. Just as soon as he's got that reasoning, he's like, right, yep, that's it. And Chris Barry's face is just like, no remorse, no hesitation. He's just like, yeah, we're doing this. But then I'm like, is that the science officer done then? And is she might come back in part 3, I don't know. If she doesn't, I'll be like, well, so she appeared for 5 minutes in part 1, 2 minutes in part 2, and that... Do you know what I mean? I hope...
Yeah.
I kind of want her to pop up in part 3 just to sort of round it off, but who knows? We'll see. So they arrive at Nose World, where Mr. Swallow is working on his noses, as he does. And like you say, he just accepts that they are what they are, doesn't even question... Say, oh, Mr. Charles or Mr. Barry. He's just like, yeah, you're the characters, quite clearly. But he claims that he doesn't have the answers, but the big boss has the answers. Which he doesn't say who that is yet, not by like name.
No.
He just calls him the big boss.
The big boss.
And it's a he, so well, I wonder. But he offers them a bit of transport to get where they need to go. The only thing he's got is the Red Dwarf, is Mr. Worf's car, the fan club president's car, for which they all react to it and say they can't drive in this, but then they end up doing. And Phil, would you like to describe to the audience what the car actually is?
Well, the car is a modified smart car, a modified smart 4.2 to be precise. And it's been modified in a certain way, as you might expect from a Red Dwarf fan club president, to look like Starbug.
Yes.
It's green. It's been painted green. It's got wings added to it. It's got these little things that come out of the wheels.
Yes.
It is, very, very interesting. It completely wasn't roadworthy, which means that they weren't allowed to film on actual roads. So they had to film here. I'm not sure how you pronounce this, but the Quintieg headquarters in Farnborough, Hampshire.
So not public roads.
Not public roads, yes, because it's not. It wasn't street legal, so it couldn't be driven in London. So they had to take it to private property to film it. But it does look good.
It's cute. Nice little Starbug modification. I'm surprised. Do you know what? I bet that car pops up at Red Dwarf conventions and everywhere.
Yeah.
And as they're driving it, they haven't said they didn't say where they were driving it to, did they?
No, not initially.
They're just looking for the big boss.
Yeah.
But in their quest to find the big boss, they end up on Coronation Street outside that Coronation Street outside the Rover's Return. And then the episode ends.
Yeah.
And this is a much better cliffhanger than part
definitely.
1.
Yeah. Because part 1 kind of was like, that doesn't feel like an end of that. Doesn't feel
the
like
portal's
an end of
open and that's it.
But this actually felt like what's happening here?
I have several questions. So I'm wondering, obviously we'll find out in part 3, I'm sure. But I'm like, is this Coronation Street as in, are they going to meet the characters or are they on the set and they're going to meet the actors who play the character? Do you get what I mean?
I get what you mean.
Because obviously at the minute, we're just seeing they're pulling up there, but we don't know if in this world, not our world, this world, Coronation Street might be a real place, or it could be the set. But yeah, I did not expect a Red Dwarf crossover with Coronation Street. Let's put it that way. Doctor Who did it with EastEnders, Red Dwarf's doing it with Corrie. So
yeah. Now we just need somebody to do it with Emmerdale.
Yes, and it will happen. Give it time. So yeah, I mean, much better cliffhanger. I'm very intrigued to see where part 3 is going to end up. So before in fact, no, I'll ask you when we get to the ranking. Actually, let's do our regular segment. So Phil, who was your favourite character in this episode?
Who was my favourite character? That is a tough one. I'm gonna go with the guy in the comic book shop.
I think he's called Noddy, isn't he?
Noddy, yeah. Who is played, I think, by somebody who is in Downton Abbey. He's played by Jeremy Swift, who played...
That rings a bell.
A butler not the main butler of the main house. He played the butler of the, one of the other rich ladies, older ladies who had another house.
Very good. There you go, Downton fans. There's your trivia for the day.
Yeah, I think we talked about Downton last week as well, didn't we?
Yes, we did. A lot of Downton connections.
We'll find a way to throw in Downton next week as well, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, we'll figure it out. So, Noddy's getting for you then.
I think so. I mean, to be honest, slim pickings here, I think. But I kind of I thought it was even though it was pretty much just like, reference after reference after reference. I think
Yeah.
he delivered them quite well. They were quite
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
His delivery was quite funny. So, yeah. At one point, I thought, I don't know if you thought that, when they then got on the bus afterwards, I was like, is that the same guy playing the bus driver?
Oh yeah,
But it wasn't. But
No.
somebody who
I get what
looked
you mean though.
very
Yeah.
similar.
Very similar looking.
But yeah, so I'm giving it to Noddy. Who
Good
are you
old
giving
Noddy.
it to?
I'm giving it to Lister again. Just because, again, I think Craig Charles, even though we think the energy's down, I think he's still putting in the most engaging performance at the minute out of the four of them. And again, we get that nice little difference with the scene on the bus with the kids. Because I think I'd be very curious to see Craig Charles in an actual drama. I'm sure he's been in... Do you know what I mean? I'd love to see him act in a part that doesn't involve comedy.
Yes.
I think he can do it. I'm sure he can do it. So I'd love to see that. But no, I like the differentiate. And this, even though it's all four of them, at the minute to me, this feels very much like Lister's story.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of okay with that at the minute. Out of the four of them, I think with this plot, if you're going to focus on one of them, I'd want it to be Lister. So
yeah,
I'm kind of...
well, I suppose he's the only, he's the human getting back to Earth. I mean, I suppose Chris Barry is, Rimmers is a human as well, but he's a dead human. So
Yeah.
it's kind of more important for
Yeah.
Lister, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Lister this time. Second week in a... Will part 3? Well, it might make it a hat trick. We'll see. But funniest moment, Phil? Was it Slim Pickings here as well? Or...
It was Slim Pickings. I'm going to give it to Rimmer committing hollow-side and
oh god,
and shoving Katrina into oncoming traffic. It was like you said, it's just kind of so out of nowhere, and it was like, oh.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that happened.
And the
like,
way
okay.
he was using her own logic against her, she just finished saying that it's okay to kill holograms, and he's just like, oh, okay then.
Yeah, all right, fine. No, very good, strong choice. I'm giving it to the Star Trek gag because I've got to admit that did get me the biggest laugh. Just their reaction to it, complete disgust. Like, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. That's not us.
Or
I
as
don't know.
he might say from a Series 3 episode, it's too early in the morning for any of that Star Trek crap.
Yes. Do you know what? As they said it, I thought, I know they've done a Star Trek reference before, like by name. So that's what it was. And what about your score, Phil? Out of how many scutters out of 10? Are we giving this, is this higher than part 1, less than part 1?
It is less than part 1.
Oh, okay.
I'm debating between a 4 and a 4.5, which
Ooh.
either one is my lowest score ever.
And did part 1, did you give it a 5?
I gave it a 5, which is equal
Yeah.
with Crikey TV and another one for lowest score. But I think I'm gonna have to give it a 4. I think
A 4?
Yeah.
Why do you think then this one's weaker?
I think it's out of the environment of Red Dwarf, and they're in this kind of, I don't know, it just feels like it's less Red Dwarf.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I kind of like what they're going for, and I do, like I said, I love meta stuff usually. I really love meta stuff. But I don't think it's really working as they intended it to here.
Sure.
I don't know. It was a drag.
It was a drag. That's fair enough.
What about you?
Well, do you know what? I think I'm going to give this higher than part 1.
Okay.
I'm giving this a 6 out of 10. Because there's a lot of problems still, as we've said. I think the lack of a studio audience is still a big problem for the most part. I think the energy's a bit down in certain scenes. The meta stuff, I'm very mixed on. There's little glimmers of it that I think really work. I don't know if it should be the main focus of like a little mini series of Red Dwarf, but that might just be me. But I think I definitely enjoyed this more than part 1 personally. Mm-hmm. If you ask me out of those two at the minute, which one would you rather rewatch? I'd probably choose part 2. So yeah, 6 out of... No, I'm pretty firm with that. 6 out of 10. So a bit higher than... I think I gave Back to Earth Part 1. I think I gave that a 4. Like, I certainly gave it lower than a 6. I know that.
Yes.
So,
can't remember what you gave it, but it was definitely either a 5 or a 4, somewhere around there.
I'm leaving off feeling very not positive. I'm intrigued to see how this wraps up. Let's put it that way. I'll come back next week, as they say. Before we just close off, Phil, I did want to ask you, given that a huge part of this episode, is about meta and about like references, and we see this a lot in like media, like you mentioned the Chip and Dale movie, which is basically meta the movie.
Yeah,
like that is every scene. There's a reference or there's a visual gag, and a lot of it's good. A lot of it's funny. But also, I guess, nostalgia, you could argue as well, like we've had with the recent Spider-Man film, the Doctor Strange multiverses as well.
Yeah.
Given that this was done a bit before that, but what's your stance on Red Dwarf going full meta? Do you think it works?
I think it can work. I think it could have worked. I think it's just a bad combination of some of the creative choices they made with it. Because I even think some of the jokes, which I don't think land in this, could have worked. It's just that either the way they're delivered or because they're delivered without any laughter, but still leaving the spaces for the laughter. I just think that they should have done it, I don't know, structured it differently maybe. I would absolutely be up for another meta-filled Red Dwarf, but
yeah,
I just think that they need to do it slightly differently.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think that again, there's little glimmers of it that I think really do work with the meta references, but then I think because there's this whole argument, the more you lean on like nostalgia and references and things, like in the comic book shop, there's a lot of references, and I know, especially in long-running sci-fi shows, people say, do too much references to the past make it inaccessible, or things like that.
Yeah, maybe it's not the references that make this bad though. That's the thing. It's just the way it's made, and like the having random scenes which just stop in the mid, sort of before a punchline even comes, and there's just nothing to sort of bookmark the end of the scene. It just kind of like fades out and fades into another scene, as if like you've cut it off halfway through the scene. Like choices like that are what really like let this down, I think.
I wonder if because I think we'll eventually, out of curiosity, watch the director's cut of this.
Yeah.
We're watching it episodically as transmitted, but the director's cut is one, I believe, 70-minute long version of it. And I'd hope that in that, the fades to black won't be present, because obviously it wouldn't have been on TV. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
so maybe
I'm really
the pacing might be
see
improved.
If it'll change my opinion on it.
I've got a gut feeling that I think the director's cut will be more enjoyable. I don't know why. If that was the original intention of making it like a movie rather than a 3-parter, then I think, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We've got part 3. So yeah, definitely come back next time, because we'll be covering part 3. See if the conclusion of this redeems itself, or if it just tanks it a bit further. We'll have to see. But in the meantime, Phil, where can the good people listening find you on the internet?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Philip Hawkins. Come and check out all my videos. Well, this podcast goes up there, but I also cover things like Doctor Who and the MCU and Star Trek and all sorts of geeky pop culture. So come and see what I've got over there. And you can find me on Twitter at CultureFilter, but filter is spelled Pilter because my name
you
is
see
Phil.
what he did there? Yes, yeah. No, that's grand.
What about you?
For me, it's Adam Martyn on YouTube, at Martyn with a Y, for all my videos and whatnot. I'm also on Twitter at Adam Martyn AMTV. You can check out my daily ramblings there. The podcast also has a Twitter as well, at All Dead Dave Pod. You can follow us there to keep up to date with new episodes, Red Dwarf related stuff, all sorts of things. So go and check us out there. Yes, well, 2 down, 1 to go. We'll see if Back to Earth can fully redeem itself. I don't know if excited is the right word, Phil, but I'm certainly intrigued.
Definitely.
Yes. Well, until then, next time, dear viewer, we shall see you later.
See you. Bye.